Celebrate the spooky season with a glow-in-the-dark long box of the damned logo t-shirt. Pre-order through November 4th to make it a permanent store item. Hello and welcome to Atop the Fourth Wall, where it's our 11th year anniversary! Yeah, I know I should be doing the Shock the Fourth Wall thing and that we're past the actual day of the anniversary, but that happens sometimes around here, and a shock is really for the horror comics. Although our birthday look at the Clone Saga could certainly be considered horror in its own right. Screw it, I'll do it for the theme song. We had so much fun last year revisiting an older point in the Clone Saga that I decided it'd be fun to go back yet again. No, we're not covering a story I've already done, but rather something I've alluded to a few times. The Exile returns, the first proper storyline for Ben Reilly after his reintroduction in the Power and Responsibility four-parter. There is some backstory that's important concerning the significance of these issues, but we'll get into that during the review proper. Otherwise, this takes place immediately after the Clone Saga began, so we can feel free to just get on with it. And if you're new to the channel and have never watched any of the Clone Saga reviews, well, there are like 10 of them, so feel free to watch them all. The important thing to know here is that once upon a time, Spider-Man had a clone named Ben Reilly who was set to take over for him as the one true Spider-Man for a number of reasons. So let's dig into Spider-Man: The Exile Returns and get our first real impressions of Ben Reilly.
Whether I'm crazy or not.
I think I'm a clone now, and I can stay at home while I'm out of town.
As I've stated before, there were 4 Spider-Man ongoing series at the time, and it might as well have been one book because they just had multiple parts of a story going on over the course of the 4 books. However, before Ben and Peter were hanging out on the regular, the idea was that the 4 books would be split. Web of Spider-Man and Adjectiveless Spider-Man would go to Ben Reilly, Amazing and Spectacular would be Peter's, and occasionally Spider-Man Unlimited would exist for some reason. And thus we begin with Web of Spider-Man number 118. I'm reading from a trade, so I shouldn't really be commenting on the cover, especially since we're doing 4 issues today. But hey, we can give a look at this one for some quick snark. It's a bit overstuffed, and yet has nothing on it. Just the introduction of the Scarlet Spider costume against a gray gradient background. A gradient, if you will. But don't, because that's terrible. In a dynamic new costume! See, just look at the pouches on his ankles. Doesn't that scream dynamic? We open in New York's Museum of Natural History, where Ben Reilly is staring at the giant wall-sized spider exhibit. No matter how far and fast he ran, he always thought of New York as home, but not his home. So it was okay if he stole some towels. But yeah, it's all about how, of course, he's a clone, so none of his memories matter, existential identity crisis because experiences that he personally didn't have, etc. I don't downplay any of this to mock it, it's a perfectly legitimate storytelling thing, it's just we've covered this before. No place to hide from the truth in this town. Well, yeah, but you're the one who decided to walk into the giant arachnids display in the museum. This one's on you. I'm nothing more than a clone, a freak genetic counterfeit of the genuine article, who has more in common with these soulless bugs than my fellow humanity. Bugs are nightmarish abominations that prove there isn't a loving God. Our Stan Lee cameo, what, he does kind of look like him, and Stan played security guards before, tells him to leave since they're closing. Ben heads out and continues his lament about New York, especially since he doesn't want to get back into costumed crime fighting again. He knows he'll have to do so if he sticks around for too long. He's not wrong. New York in either Marvel or DC is constantly besieged by alien invasions and common criminals. I mean, say what you will about Gotham, but it's got nothing on New York and superhero universes. Anyway, he spots a hoodie with a spider on it, yet another reminder of the superhero thing, but also notices a robbery in progress. Fortunately, however, he doesn't need to get involved as cops show up to deal with it. Still, he worries that if the cops hadn't come along, he couldn't have avoided his responsibility to do good. Meanwhile, Venom is swinging around the city as well, having come back after hearing about the events at Ravencroft in Power and Responsibility. But since that got resolved without him, now he's just looking for criminals to beat up. He takes down some bank robbers involved in a high-speed chase and swings off. The pursuing cops, of course, unable to stop him, as the symbiote can absorb their bullets and spit them out again. The downside is that it feels like he's pooping metal every time he does it. Back at the hospital, where Aunt May is in her coma during a good chunk of the Clone Saga, Mary Jane's Aunt Anna is crying over her and is surprisingly visited by Betty Brant, Peter's original love interest pre-Gwen Stacy. Ben is hanging around outside the window being a creeper because why not? And we get a little tour of memories for Ben, going to places like the warehouse where Peter confronted Uncle Ben's murderer, the Brooklyn Bridge where Gwen Stacy died, the George Washington Bridge, no, wait, now it's the Brooklyn Bridge.
Space is warped and time is bendable.
And he spots a jumper on the bridge, whom Ben swings over to catch because, not again! I know at this point it wasn't as common, but having Peter or Ben save someone on the bridge is as boring and cliched as someone writing something poignant happening on the same day Bruce Wayne's parents died. It just feels hackney when they keep on doing it. There's no more emotions to wring out of it at a certain point. Especially in this case. Say what you will about some of the other times we've seen them do it in the Clone Saga, but at least they usually have it be Mary Jane or the Gwen Stacy clone. This is just some random woman we'll never see again. And why the hell was she wearing like a 19th century nightgown? Feel free to tell me what the actual period is supposed to be, because I have no friggin' clue. Also, how the hell did she get up there? Why wasn't she wearing shoes? She fainted on the way down, so she's unconscious as Ben drops her off at a hospital. I need a stretcher over here fast, folks, and a stethoscope with a sympathetic ear. How's that gonna help? She's a nameless extra who has no dialogue. Might as well have been a mannequin you rescued. Ben continues what he's been doing throughout this issue, contemplating, but overhears a nearby car radio that he can hear from a rooftop. Latest update from our Venom Watch 94 spotters puts the vicious vigilante somewhere on the Upper East Side. God, Venom was so popular in the mid-90s that even in-universe they had an official Venom Watch series on the radio.
Dude, Venom Watch was the best thing ever! It gave you up-to-date information on all the things Venom was doing, like what he was eating for breakfast. Spoilers, it was brains! Is Venom a zombie?
Having heard stories before about Venom, and upset that Peter never took care of him, Ben decides to finally do something about it and quickly assembles a costume. It's never explained where he gets the red Zentai suit or whatever it is that serves as the base, but he got the hoodie from the store that he saw earlier and rips off the sleeves. As I've said, I love the Scarlet Spider outfit. I do not understand why the creators at the time thought it looked cheesy. I mean, for crying out loud, in an age of boring Rob Liefeld designs where all of them are just like one color except for a stripe of white or something, why would you reject something that looks this good? It's well balanced color-wise and still looks different enough from Peter's outfit to make it unique, yet identifiable as associated with Spider-Man. Honestly, my only critique of it is an art like this, where apparently his hoodie was triangle-shaped, since it tightens around his waist instead of being, you know, a loose hoodie. But that's a pretty tiny issue in the grand scheme of things. Also, check out Ghost Spider-Man here, whose eyes are apparently transparent. Anyway, we move into Adjectiveless Spider-Man number 52. Something I didn't really mention with the last issue is that Venom does his own little tour of the city while Ben is introspecting, with Daily Bugle reporter Ken Ellis debuting there after spotting Eddie Brock in the church where he first became Venom. Here, Ken is happy about how he got a front-page story about Venom in the city, with apparently terrible space management on said front page, since there's a huge glob of emptiness right there in the middle. Nice, Jameson gave me the front page, and you, Mr. Brock, are gonna keep me there. Not if you keep filling it with blank space, dude! He gets a tip about Venom and he heads out, hoping to try to score an exclusive interview with him. However, he's met outside by Ben in the Scarlet Spider outfit. Who do you think you are, Spider-Man? No, I'd never think that. I wear the same colors as him and have a big spider on my chest because I'm not Spider-Man! Wait. Also, Ben, what the hell are you doing between panels here? Did you need to get in your yoga stretches or something? Anyway, he's having trouble tracking down Venom and wants Ellis's help. Ellis agrees, but only if he can get an exclusive out of both of them. I don't know. Good enough for me. You seem like a man of your word. Indecisiveness from someone I've never met before is the same as making a promise. Venom has been spotted at the Roosevelt Island tram terminal, so Ben swings off towards it. At the terminal, Venom is monologuing to himself about all the people who are making a fuss over him, despite the fact that he's a good guy now. I'll get into that more in a minute, but yeah, despite having two voices in his head, apparently Venom felt the need to pontificate out loud about how he doesn't want to endanger innocents. But his accidental creation of carnage has led to more deaths. Also, he's either killed or beaten up a bunch of... well, we don't know who they are, but given this book, they were probably bad guys? Ben soon arrives and he starts wondering if this is a mistake. Spidey doesn't exactly have a great track record of taking on Venom, and even then, Ben's own experiences are a copy and not the real thing. And so the fight begins, and Ben realizes how outclassed he is. He's faster than I thought. And twice as insane! All he did was attack you and say he was going to break your spine. I mean, by that reasoning, every professional wrestler is twice as insane. One interesting thing to note is that Ben's spider sense is going off. I'm curious if that's just a mistake on the part of the artist, or if it's actually a bit of cleverness. Venom doesn't set off Peter's spider sense because he was bonded with the symbiote for a time, but Ben wasn't. It's possible, like I said, that the artist didn't know about that and was just putting it in because, hey, he's being attacked. But I do love the idea that they are indeed different people, and thus it isn't an issue with him. Anyway, Venom realizes this isn't Peter.
He has an agreement with us. He would leave us alone, and we wouldn't eat his brains.
Leaving aside the goofy brain-eating thing that was prevalent with him, this is the core issue at the heart of the story. Venom was insanely popular, and with that popularity comes a desire to make them less of a villain. Thus Venom was pushed into the anti-hero direction. However, before Peter made deals with Satan to get rid of his marriage, his moral compass was pretty dead set on stopping murderers like Brock, criminal killer or not. And thus the idea that he would make a deal with Venom to just stay out of each other's way because he couldn't figure out a way to beat him, even after defeating him before, rubbed a lot of fans and creators the wrong way. And thus this story was born. Ben Reilly at the time was being pushed as the original one true Spider-Man. If he can defeat Venom, it can prove that of course Peter resorted to such tactics, because he's not the original who has the real determination. It's still loaded with problems, but it's a good narrative direction that kills two birds with one stone. With Venom slicing at him and calling him a fake, Ben collapses before Venom can make the final strike, only to be interrupted by this lady. This is Scream, one of 5 other symbiotes spawned from Venom. It's a long story, a Venom miniseries called Lethal Protector. I should also note that the name Scream is never given in the comic. That was invented for the toy line featuring these guys. They were mostly created because, well, symbiotes were popular in the 90s, so let's just pump out a bunch of generic ones and see if anything sticks. Anyway, she's here because she wants Venom's help. But he wants nothing to do with her, intent on killing her because he feels like all of his symbiote spawns are evil and will kill innocents. Even though he himself is an example of not wanting to kill innocents, and the entire reason she's there is that they want help controlling the symbiotes to prevent them from killing innocents. And for this, Venom says they must die!
This is starting to sound like a bad comic book plot.
Anyway, Ben is injured and bleeding pretty badly, so he slinks away to let them duke it out. Ellis soon arrives and takes notes for a new story because, hey, if he can't score an interview with the winner, this is still news and all. It was then that the superpowered battle began in earnest. Venom's rage soon increased exponentially. Yeah, that's great, Ken, but we need a good title for this article, like, "You won't believe what happened when this symbiote spawn of Venom encountered him." Ben seals up his wound with webbing and tries to help the innocent people being caught in the crossfire of the symbiote battle, though he throws himself a pity party in his head even while actively assisting people. Back in the battle,
I didn't want this, just wanted to talk. Too bad. Maybe we'll talk after you're dead.
How dare you answer my insane rages with kindness? Dear God, why can't you die?
to keep them from knocking over the tram in their fight, Ben kicks the two of them into the water, ending it. He refuses to answer Ken's request for an interview and slings off, with Ken coming up with the Scarlet Spider name for him. The issue ends as Venom emerges from the water. Tonight, Venom has made 2 new enemies. 3 if you count the fish nibbling at his foot. Before the night's end, he vows to see them both dead. Well, first maybe he should see about the crick in his back. Looks like he's howling in pain from that. Hell, it looks like he even bit his tongue. Web of Spider-Man number 119 picks up with Ben just barely managing to return home to his seedy apartment. He tries to use a payphone to contact Dr. Sayward Trainer for help, but collapses just after making the call. Fortunately, a good Samaritan named Gabrielle Greer shows up to help him. Gabrielle is the first in the long line of Ben Reilly supporting characters who disappears never to be seen again. A shame, too. I like the alliteration. Venom goes to try to find Peter, looking for a lead on the Scarlet Spider, but finds both Aunt May's house and the brownstone he's living at empty.
Looks like Petey's really coming up in the world, but no one's home to enjoy the good life.
Yeah, well, Venom, some of us work for a living. At the hospital, Ben insists on being kept awake as stitches are put in, while a nearby nurse, who looks suspiciously like Nurse Bratchett from last week's comic but with different hair. Not surprising that she lost her job at the asylum, her 160-year-old patient escaped, and she was found half naked preparing to have sex with some other dude who worked there. Contacts Ken Ellis to let him know about the mystery patient. Ellis heads out to see if it's the Scarlet Spider, while on a rooftop, Scream follows him. Although free of the corporate survivalist group for months already, the woman beneath the living costume is all but nameless now, barely struggling to maintain some sense of self. If only a toy company could come along and name her. Scream thinks about how difficult it's getting for her to resist the symbiote talking to her and trying to get her to be violent, hoping that following Ellis will lead her to the Scarlet Spider and in turn to Venom again. This chain of following people is gonna fall apart the instant Ellis gets stuck in traffic. Over in Midtown, we have the first official appearance of Kane, the Peter Parker clone who was originally set up here as just another weird, mysterious character because Judas Traveler wasn't enough. Admittedly, all we see here is that he's set up as a hired assassin who fails to take out his target because he's busy reading the article in the Bugle wondering about the Scarlet Spider's connection to Spider-Man. He then kills the mobsters whom he failed. Something else has come up. Please contact a customer service representative to arrange a refund or store credit on your next assassination. Back at the hospital, Ben spots Ken Ellis approaching and makes a break for it onto the roof, putting on his mask in the meantime so he can avoid having his identity compromised by Scream on said roof. Yeah, he probably didn't want Ellis to see his face, but still feels a bit contrived. Anyway, Scream says she needs his help, but before she can even finish a sentence, he just says bye and leaps off the roof.
No! He's gone already! And I'm incapable of following him for some reason!
Actually, he apparently was able to hide under a ledge, which fooled her completely. But her rampage on the roof knocks off a bunch of debris that he has to break up before it hurts someone on the ground. Heading back to his apartment, Ben uses his makeshift chemistry set to create some new tools for his arsenal. Ideas that he had been considering for the last few years. Hear me out here. Spider-Rangs. Back in the city, Scream has embraced her destructive tendencies as she has decided to attack an ad for a soda. Pep-Z. You know, some people say you can't tell the difference between Pep-Z and Cuba-Cola, but I can. Cuba's better. Venom attacks her, intent on literally ripping the symbiote from her body, when suddenly some small orbs hit Venom and expand into webbing around his head. I call it impact webbing Venom, generating enough micro-tendrils in microseconds to cut you off from your victim, also cutting you off from your heir! Oh boy. Actually, Venom just rips off the webbing, the issue ending with the two ready to confront one another. A single pellet of only one new weapon! Out of 2, but that sounds less impressive. Adjectiveless Spider-Man number 53 finishes off the storyline. 30 seconds ago, the man who had been dubbed the Scarlet Spider believed his rage would be enough to enable him to beat Venom. Now he realizes that that wasn't necessarily true. If only he had constructed new weapons to fight him. But no, he only came at him with rage. Yeah, that's not the only disconnect from the end of the last issue and the beginning of this one. Ben told Venom that his distraction gave Scream enough time to get away, but here we can see that she's unconscious a few feet away.
Great continuity!
Strangled to death with the hood of my own newly created costume? Guess I deserve it. I'm only a clone!
There is logic in what he says.
Yeah, this is often the problem with having multiple writers at play who apparently weren't working that closely together. Ben is just agonizing about how stupid and sucky he is, again, after we just went through him becoming determined to stop Venom and came up with stuff like impact webbing. But yeah, once again he snaps out of it and I guess kind of swings his arm back and punches Venom? The motion lines suggest that the direction his fist came from would mean he brought his arm all the way back behind his head and then swung it sideways to hit Venom. Hell, Venom himself seemed confused about how this punch happened. Still, that bizarreness is quickly made up for when Ben punches him so hard he flies into a lighted sign across the street. Oh no, I only punched him one building away instead of 3! Guess I deserve this, being a clone and all. At the Daily Bugle, J. Jonah Jameson stops by Ken Ellis's desk.
Just wanted to tell you you're doing a great job. Keep it up.
Was Jameson replaced by a clone at some point? What the hell? Back in the fight, more fighting. We get some more demonstration of impact webbing as Venom gets wrapped up in it, giving Ben a chance to catch his breath. Meanwhile, Kraven the Hunter's son exists. Yeah, this is a bit of the Clone Saga I've never really gotten to before because it's boring. This is Vladimir Kraven, as I said, the son of Kraven the Hunter, aka the guy who buried Spider-Man alive. After his father's death, he took on the mantle of Grim Hunter, and he appears for a bit of these early days of the Clone Saga. He is not interesting. His whole deal is, I will hunt Spider-Man like my dad did out of revenge. And that's it. There's just nothing that compelling about him. But hey, at least we interrupted the much more interesting fight scene so that we know he's around. Really adds a lot to this. Probably not really. Back to the fight, Ben prepares for Venom's escape, pondering how unthinkable it is that Peter made any sort of deal with him. Has he changed so much since I received his memories? His values? It's almost as if I already confronted him directly about this the last time we encountered each other, but that would just be ridiculous. Impact webbing! After a brief bit introducing Detective Raven, another character whose plot would be more relevant later on, Venom finally breaks free and tackles Ben over the edge of the building. Yeah, definitely could use a stronger webbing. Dude, I know you're suffering from blood loss and probably a concussion at some point, but you managed to hold him in place for several minutes, which is more than a lot of characters have been able to do to him. Another brief interlude, this one introducing a gangster named Gavin Thorpe. He is not important.
That was a great scene.
You know, breaking up a fight is one thing, but it's something else when you keep showing off a bunch of new villains when you've still got a perfectly good one in the middle of a good brawl. Venom slams Ben on the ground and prepares to kill him, but Ben gets an inspired idea, firing his impact webbing into Venom's mouth. The impact webbing hits Eddie Brock's skin and starts surrounding it, separating the human part from the symbiote part. And thus Ben reveals his other new weapon, paralyzing stingers. It doesn't seem to affect Eddie, but Ben just starts wailing on him until he's down for the count. Kane is watching this go down, and even though he could easily go and kill the guy he hates who's already suffering from a major stomach wound, he instead just stands in an awkward pose. What is he even doing? It's like the wind is blowing really, really hard in one direction, knocking him off balance while his hand tries to pretend that he's grabbing some really low-hanging testicles.
Behold, I am the mysterious new character, Kane! Take me seriously, damn it!
The symbiote, separated from Brock, tries to attack Ben and bond with him, but Ben so thoroughly rejects the symbiote that the costume just falls over unconscious. The impact of its fall kicking up a cloud of dust. Or radioactive gas, I guess. Why is the dust green? Anyway, the authorities, the high-tech guardsmen as they're called, arrive and take Eddie Brock and the symbiote into custody, swearing to keep them as far away from each other as possible, and congratulating the Scarlet Spider on taking him down. And so our storyline ends with that giving him a bit of a confidence booster. I did it! I beat Venom! Maybe it's time to start claiming some sort of life for myself. There's nothing to stand in my way. Nothing at all! Up yours, ghostly heads of people floating in the sky! You're behind me, so you're not in my way! While I have been, quite a bit critical of this storyline, nitpicking artistic flubs or goofy dialogue, these comics do not suck, and I actually quite like them. They are not perfect, of course. As you saw, I found plenty to make fun of and critique, but the overall execution is pretty solid and enjoyable. Ben Reilly getting to trounce Venom after a hard fight is nothing to scoff at. Bear in mind, he didn't even rely on the standard methods that symbiotes are weak to, fire and sound. He used his intelligence to come up with new weapons and strategies. Sure, the separate him from the symbiote via impact webbing thing was something he came up with on the spot, but Peter's own attempts at fighting Venom were a mixed bag. He had beaten him before, but his ultimate solution had been to just say, stay out of my way and I'll stay out of yours, and allow a known murderer to go free. The logic used to show Ben as the one true Spider-Man is a good one, though the unintended side effect is that it makes Peter look like a fool when it's been him we've been following for years, as well as potentially comes across as, check out the new hotness, screw the people you already like and established. I think it comes across as okay as it could be. The woe is me, I'm a clone thing hadn't really overstayed its welcome yet, so it could be considered pretty fresh at the time of its initial release. The artwork is mixed, mostly due to conventions of the 90s, but the actual fights of the comic are pretty damn good, showing a lot of action and energy to them. It is hurt by the constant inner monologuing, telling not showing when they say things like, wow, he's so fast, as well as the interruptions by other characters. But it's still good and was definitely a sign that the Clone Saga had potential to be great. Just it didn't really end up living up to that promise. Next time, Secret Origins Month starts up, with an entire month devoted to DC characters. You know, the real unintended side effect of the ghostly heads being behind Ben while he's in this pose is that it looks like they're all checking out his ass. I mean, look at Ken Ellis. It's like he's moving his head to the side to get a better view.
Hello, my friends. Please be sure to like this video, subscribe, hit the bell, and share it with others. And if you get a chance, maybe check out my Patreon.